Picture this. It's just after 4 inches the morning on a cold December Monday in Minnesota. A 25-year-old man picks up his phone and dials 911. He's been stabbed. But here's the thing that will haunt you about this call. He tells the dispatcher it was an accident. A minor disagreement, he says. His voice starts breaking. He starts to cough. Then, the woman who allegedly stabbed him takes the phone right out of his hand and describes exactly where the knife went in. 31 minutes after that call, Quinton McKay Hughes was pronounced dead. This is the case of Quinton McKay Hughes and Katerina Ivanovna Markiv, a relationship just 2 months old. One night that went terribly wrong, and a 911 call that investigators say tells a story far more disturbing than minor disagreement. Stay with me, because the details in those court documents are ones you're not going to forget. Before we get into what happened in that apartment, let's talk about who these two people were. Quinton McKay Hughes was 25 years old and lived in Sauk Rapids, Minnesota, a small city just a few miles east of St. Cloud. From what's publicly known, he was a young man living a normal life. And at some point, he met Katerina Markiv through work. The two of them were co-workers. Katerina Ivanovna Markiv was 23 years old and lived in St. Cloud, in an apartment on the 1200 block of Washington Memorial Drive. According to what she later told police, the two of them had started dating in October of 2025. Just about 2 months before the night, everything fell apart. 2 months into a relationship, both of them in their early 20s, both working the same job. Now, here's something that will become important in a few minutes. Two of their co-workers later spoke with investigators. One of them described Markiv as an emotional person, someone who would get upset and needed to step away to calm down. The other co-worker said something that is far more chilling. According to the criminal complaint, this co-worker told police that Markiv herself had said, just the week before, that she gets so, quote, crazy to the point she will kill somebody. That co-worker told police he didn't hear her direct that at anyone in particular, but prosecutors clearly found it significant enough to include in the charges. Keep that in mind as we walk through what the evidence says happened on the night of December 7th, going into the 8th of December, 2025. According to court documents, Hughes was spending the night at Markiv's apartment. The two had been together through the evening, and Markiv later admitted to investigators that she had been drinking throughout the night. At some point in those late night hours, an argument started. What was it about? According to Markiv's own statement to police, given after she was read her Miranda rights, she said she wanted to have fun that night. When investigators asked her to clarify, she said she meant she wanted to have sex with Hughes. He didn't want to. That refusal, she said, led to an argument. She said Hughes raised his voice at her, and when she tried to explain her side of things, he kept cutting her off and interrupting her. Here's what she said happened next. According to the criminal complaint filed in Stearns County District Court, she said she had a knife at her side. She swung it. She claimed she thought she was only going to scratch him, that she didn't realize he was that close. Then, by her own account, something shifted. She told investigators, and this is a direct quote from the charging documents, "Something in my head got triggered." She also admitted to punching Hughes during the argument, though she described those as light taps. An 8-inch boning-style knife, a stab wound to the left side of his chest. And here's what the crime scene told officers when they arrived. Quinton Hughes was on the floor, unresponsive, with a significant amount of blood on him, and pooled on the floor around him. According to the criminal complaint, blood was coming from his chest, his neck, his face, from his nose, and from his mouth. Markiv, when police arrived, was pressing her hands against his wound, trying to stop the bleeding. But here's the part that is going to stay with you. Before the officers got there, Hughes himself made the 911 call. While he was bleeding from a stab wound to the chest, he picked up that phone, and what he said to the dispatcher is something investigators did not overlook. At approximately 4:05 a.m. on Monday, the 8th of December, 2025, Quinton Hughes called 911. He told dispatchers he had been stabbed. And then, in what can only be described as one of the most heartbreaking details of this entire case, he told them it was an accident. A minor disagreement, he said. Dispatchers could hear him struggling. He was coughing. His ability to speak was deteriorating. At some point during that call, Katerina Markiv took the phone from him. She told the dispatcher that the stab wound was at his left. She used an expletive. Nipple, left side of his chest, directly over his heart. She was also heard on that call, apologizing to Hughes. Officers were dispatched immediately to the apartment on Washington Memorial Drive. They arrived and found exactly what the call had suggested: a gravely wounded man on the floor. Despite the fact that Hughes had initially shown some eye movement and had a faint pulse when they arrived, first responders were unable to save him. At 4:36 a.m., Quinton McKay Hughes was pronounced dead. 31 minutes after that 911 call was made, officers found the knife, an 8-inch boning-style knife with blood on the blade. On the floor, behind where Markiv was standing, Katerina Markiv was taken into custody that same morning, without incident. At the scene, according to jail records, she was booked into the Stearns County Jail at 11:26 a.m. on December 8th. Street Cloud Police also called in reinforcements. The Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the BCA, was brought in to assist with the investigation, which authorities described as active and ongoing in those initial days. When investigators sat down with Markiv and conducted a Mirandized interview, meaning she had been informed of her rights before speaking, she gave her account of the events. She said the stabbing was accidental. She said she didn't intend to kill Hughes. She said she didn't know her own strength. She said she has anger issues. And she told police that, to her knowledge, Hughes had never abused or assaulted her. Her statement to investigators, that she just swung the knife and didn't realize how close he was, that she only meant to scratch him, is the version of events she has put forward. Whether that account holds up in court is a question for a jury to decide. Because here's the thing about those co-worker statements. When police spoke with two of their colleagues, they got a picture of someone who had spoken openly, before any of this happened, about her own capacity for extreme violence. One of those co-workers described her as an emotional person, who frequently needed to step away when upset. The other said she had explicitly said, the week before, that she could see herself killing someone. Prosecutors found that significant enough to highlight in the charging documents. And when you look at exactly what charges she's facing, 2 separate counts, there's a very specific legal reason for that. Stick with me, because this part matters for understanding where this case is headed. This case sits at the intersection of several things that are deeply important to talk about: domestic violence, anger management, alcohol, and the tragic, irreversible nature of a moment that cannot be undone. Quinton McKay Hughes was 25 years old. He was from Sauk Rapids. He had a whole life ahead of him. He died in the apartment of someone he had been dating for barely 2 months, in the early hours of a Monday morning, from a single stab wound to the chest. That's a loss that doesn't have a neat frame around it. The fact that Hughes himself, in what may have been his final coherent moments, told a 911 dispatcher that it was an accident and a minor disagreement, is something that sits with you. People who study domestic violence situations sometimes describe that pattern: a victim minimizing what happened, even in crisis. We don't know exactly what was in Hughes's mind during that call, but prosecutors clearly read more into this situation than the words "minor disagreement" and the statement from that coworker that Markiv had said just days earlier that she was capable of killing someone raises questions that only a trial will fully address. Was that an offhand comment? A dark joke? Or something else? That's for the court to determine. As of this video, there are still significant open questions in this case. What will Markiv's legal defense argue? Will she testify on her own behalf? Will the defense contest the coworker statements? Will the question of intent, the core of a second-degree murder case, come down to her account of swinging the knife without realizing Hughes was close? The Minnesota court system will have to work through all of that. And until it does, the full picture of what happened on the night of December 7th into the 8th of December 2025 in that street cloud apartment belongs to the justice process, not to speculation. What we know for certain is this: a 5-year-old man named Quinton McKay Hughes called 911 from the floor of his girlfriend's apartment. In the middle of the night, he was kind enough, or in shock enough, or loyal enough to try to protect her even in that moment, telling dispatchers it wasn't a big deal. He died 31 minutes later, and a 3-year-old woman named Katerina Ivanovna Markiv is now charged with his murder, held on $500,000 bail, waiting for a trial that will try to answer the question of what really happened behind that door. Quinton Hughes deserves to have his name said clearly. He deserves to have people know who he was. A young man from Sauk Rapids. Someone's son. Someone's friend. Someone's coworker. Whatever the courts ultimately find, his life mattered, and what happened to him matters. We'll continue to follow this case as it moves through the system. If this video hit you, consider sharing it so more people hear Quinton's story. And if you or someone you know is in a relationship where anger and violence feel like they're building, please reach out for help. Help is there. I'll see you in the next one.